Welcome to the next in the series of Transforming Assessment webinars. The session today is on mobile learning devices. The presenter is Associate Professor David Kennedy, who is the Director of the Teaching and Learning Centre at Lingnan University, Hong Kong. The session's duration is approximately 1 hour and 11 minutes, including post-session discussion. I'll now hand you over to Professor Geoffrey Crisp, who will introduce our presenter, David Kennedy.
To the next in the series of the Transforming Assessment webinars. We're very fortunate today to have David Kennedy from Lingnan University in Hong Kong. I'm just going to So David's going to be talking about learning and assessment using mobile devices, and he's going to be using some examples from second language courses and other work that he's been involved in Hong Kong. So David, I'm going to hand over to you now, and you can take the webinar away.
Thank you very much, Geoffrey, and also to Mathew for all the assistance in this process. Welcome, everybody. We shall see what has to happen. You should see my first slide up. It seems to be happening quite happily. I'm currently the Director of the Teaching and Learning Centre at Lingnan University, which is a small liberal arts university in Hong Kong. Up here now for almost 9 years, and during that time I've been investigating the use of mobile learning tools for since about 2004/5. I've done a number of projects over that time, everything from looking at the use of PDAs and multiple choice questions and quizzes and providing feedback to students, right through to running programs in remote locations, in this case far northern Thailand, looking at data collection and use of mobile devices by students undertaking studies in geography and for the baccalaureate. And I'd like to talk today a little bit about the project that I've been engaged in for about a year now, although we've really only run it for the first time live in the last semester. And our semesters here start around about in September. So first thing, a little bit about the context that we live in up here. It's an amazing place, Hong Kong. If you haven't visited, I recommend it, and you're most welcome. Anybody on this list clearly has an interest in mobile learning. And I want to talk about the ways in which the community uses mobiles and the ways in which we're trying to use them here. A little bit about the design processes and designing, how we've been going about the design process, and some of the things about institutional issues that we've learnt. The first thing that's really important to notice is we are a very small liberal arts university. That means we have an extremely broad curriculum. We're technology rich, quite well resourced, but we have some fairly conservative people, shall we say, in our institution, being mostly populated by humanities specialists. The thing I want to draw your attention to on this particular context slide is we have something like 184 mobile phone ownership in Hong Kong, 84%, which is an astonishing figure. And I have actually seen somebody on the train here in Hong Kong with 4 mobile phones and working their way from one phone to the next in trying to in making phone calls. We also have very inexpensive broadband, and I want people to keep this in mind, because you would think, given this situation, that would make employing mobile devices in teaching and learning incredibly easy to do. However, there are some sticking points. First of all, in our context, we are faced with massive changes in Hong Kong at the moment. And this OBATL, outcomes-based approaches to teaching and learning. And the reason I got our elephant there is because this is my virtual elephant out there in the environment, and my virtual assessment elephant, because one of the things that is required is that we have strong evidence of student learning outcomes. And these outcomes have to be linked to the graduate attributes. And they're very, very untidy things to look at evaluating and measuring. So the giant elephant in my particular part of the world, my Asian elephant, is this assessment issue. And how do we assess for these graduate attributes? Now, one of the things that we first have to deal with when you're running a project like this is you have to find somebody who's willing to work with you, who will not ban students from having their cell phones out and in their classes. And this is a key issue for us in terms of doing this kind of research, because there are some people you can speak to and they will basically say, no, 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 you're supposed to be listening to me, not playing with that toy. The other thing we have to do in our university is, these are the kinds of high-level things we claim that we're achieving for our students. And if you look around across most universities, what you find is that, you know, problem solving, critical thinking, reasoning, planning skills, integrity, analytical skills, leadership, pretty much these things exist in all institutions, and yet we claim that we're going to be creating curricula and providing evidence to show that we've achieved these things. Now, we've done quite a bit of research before we started this particular project, and we find that about 70% of our students actually have smartphones. And that is, you know, phones with wireless, 3G, internet, and email capability. So in theory, we could improve communication and processes pretty much any time and anywhere and anywhen around the campus. The campus is fully wireless, and about 75% of the students live on campus in hostels, which are also wireless, and that creates some unique problems, and I'll talk about those shortly. I thought I'd introduce this one just to remind folks, because I don't know the breadth of the audience, but really, if you look at these two lists, the one on the left, the blue ones, basically we're looking at a complete mirroring of all of the applications we once understood to be associated with desktop or notebook computers. We can basically do all of those on a mobile platform, and that's part of my interest. We don't do all of those in our particular project, but we certainly have tapped into a number of them, including YouTube, documents, texting, digital content, audio and video, podcasting, email, and games. So, and I also thought it would be useful for us to reflect for a moment, to think about and what your first computer was like. And I remember the first machine I bought, which I was very happy with, and I did my word processing and drawing and basic spreadsheets. But my current mobile phone has a processor that's about 125 times faster, and the storage capacity is increased by about 20,000. You're almost right, Geoffrey. It was a Mac SE. I went high-tech in those days. And it's quite clear, certainly in this market, that all the phones that we use will one day basically be smart. In my earlier iterations and work, what we found out was that the chip manufacturers of mobile phones, a lot of the things that we may not see for a year or even two are actually already built into the chips. So you can be assured that whatever functions you've got on your current smartphone, there will be even more that you haven't thought about or don't realize that are actually built there. It's also handy to talk about my context in terms of the growth in Asia. It's truly phenomenal, and it's only outstretched by outdone by the developing world. And I simply think that's primarily due to the fact that they've got a lower base and therefore their growth rates are faster. But let's switch to the Hong Kong situation again. Mobile phone penetration, these figures are all relatively recent, 184%. That means significant numbers of the population have more than one phone. Broadband is extremely high penetration rates. Personal computers, internet usage rates, and wireless hotspots. Now the last is very, very significant. The Hong Kong government has combined with the universities and the local telecom, and most of these wireless hotspots are free for university students. So we see that as a great opportunity for us. So if you're in a McDonald's, coffee shops, Starbucks, Pacific Coffee, libraries, malls, even the train stations, the underground train stations, all of our students have free wireless for any device they're carrying around with them. So it's a pretty amazing place in terms of that. So the question we asked ourselves and the team was, well, if we have such ubiquitous wireless access that's free, what do our students do with it? Now, in contrast, I'd like to show you something from the Nokia Life Tools project. And this is a guy that we don't have to convince to use a mobile phone. And I love this photograph because if you look at the sort of Western style clothing, you know, 20th century clothing, plowing a field that basically looks, you know, probably much as it was done more than, you know, several hundred years ago, and yet he's holding a piece of modern 21st century technology in his hand for learning and for information and for exam preparation and getting up-to-date information and general knowledge. So this is a person we don't have to convince about the value, but that's not the situation when we start talking about learning in Hong Kong in general and mobile phones. So here's what we know from our surveys about our students. And this was done a year ago, 2009. We're processing the figures for 2010, and it's about the same. There's not huge increases, except in things like accessing the internet has gone up, sending email has gone up, and using the mobiles to send images around has improved a little bit. So we have, you'd think we have an open door when it comes to the students in terms of using these things for learning. And we also have some growth rates because prior to coming to Lingnan, I was at Hong Kong U, and we ran the same survey there in 2007 and 8. And you can see the growth rates of the use of these devices across the universities. And Lingnan students are much poorer than Hong Kong U. Hong Kong U students tend to get the best, if you like, and the richest students. So you can see there, even within the space of 12 months, there's been phenomenal growth in the use of mobiles for various purposes, including internet and email and instant messaging. Now, look onto the current study, try and keep to time. We decided on a project because I said one of the things we have to do is to work with people in the academic domains who are happy to have people with mobile phones in their classroom and use them. And not everybody's quite so enamored with such devices. So one of the things that we did was we looked at the curriculum well before we started handing out the phones. And this particular project is funded by the University Grants Committee here through a General Research Fund grant. And even there, you have to overcome some of the resistance of perceptions of what these devices are for. And we had some difficulty in convincing the UGC panel that buying mobile phones to actually gather data about the way students use them was actually a research activity.